Hey kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza, and this is a reading vlog. Alright, so there is absolutely no plan to this nonsense, but I have found that when I keep doing reading vlogs, it holds me more accountable to keeping up with my books. We're trying to keep me out of a reading slump, people. Reading vlogs have been helping. So here's what we're going to do. We are currently participating, even though I'm a terrible team member because I went on vacation at the first week of the readathon, but I'm trying my best. We are currently participating in the romance readathon, which is a Bridgerton-inspired readathon that I will put stuff up on the screen. And you can see there is a bunch of co-hosts to this readathon, but I actually heard about this from Maggie's Books and Stuff and Happily Ever April, which are two booktubers that I watch. The point is that you join a team and you're supposed to get points by reading books. Obviously, it's a readathon. We do these things. I need to pick up some historical romance books to add to the point tally. So the first book, well, technically, I actually have already finished one book for the readathon, but that's neither here nor there. The book that I'm going to be picking up is going to be Gallows Pole. I actually just finished the Maid and the Cook in the same series, but this is a historical, or I don't know if this is in, yes, this is in the Skull and Crossbones romance series. I don't believe this one takes place on a pirate ship, but taking place in the same world. Historical, pirate, adjacent situations. Also, it's going to earn me some points. I have also currently in the middle of two physical books that I want to finish. I am reading Into the Drowning Deep, and this is by Mira Grant, which is the pen name for Shauna Maguire, and I am almost halfway through. And all you really need to know about this is it's murder mermaids. There's murder mermaids. There. That's all you need to know. And the other book that I'm currently just past the halfway point is One Dark Window. And this is by Rachel Gillig. This is I think it's a fantasy romance, but I don't think it's a fantasy romance. This is the story of Elsbeth, and she years ago became infected with a magical illness. And the people that get this illness either die of the illness, or if they survive, they develop magical powers. Basically, anyone who got this illness is condemned to death because the magical powers that you can get eventually will turn you mad. And so if you get infected, you are promptly executed. But Elsbeth was sick in secret. Her family kept it a secret from anyone that would have just gotten rid of her because she was sick. And then after she recovers from this illness, she has no outwardly signs of magic, so her family thinks she's safe. The thing is that Elsbeth for years has been hiding the fact that she does have a magical ability. Something else you need to know about this world is all of the magic is tied to ancient gods and this mist in the woods, but also to these magical cards that can imbue the person that possesses them with different magic abilities based on the card. These cards are obviously very, very powerful, and the people that have them are the people in charge. Elsbeth and her magic that she has inherited from this illness she survived caused her to accidentally kind of steal the magic from a card, and now she has a creature that lives in her mind. Very Venom, you know? It talks to her, she talks to it, it's a monster, but it's not in charge. It's kind of living back there in the back, kind of giving her a running commentary. A lot of the times in very poetic ways. He kind of speaks in rhyme. Elsbeth has to keep all this a secret, or she will probably be executed for having magical abilities. That's all you need to know about that. So we've got those three books going. I also need to pick an audiobook because I like to get things done, you know? And though it doesn't help me at all for my readathon, sorry if the angle changed, my battery died. Okay, so I'm having all kinds of malfunctions today. The audiobook that I've decided to pick up is The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet, and this is by Becky Chambers. I just like Becky Chambers books, and I feel like I hadn't read a sci-fi in a minute, so I wanted to pick one up. So we are currently reading one historical romance, one horror, one fantasy, maybe fantasy romance, and a sci-fi. Just all over the place, you know, which is my reading style. This is going to be chaos. Here we go. We got our matcha. We're comfy cozy. We have something on our shirt that I'm not going to show you, but you're probably going to see it. Just on brand. It's like the white trash version of matcha, how I fix it, but damn if it's not delicious. We are here today because I have finished some books. I know. It's been like 2 days since I updated you, but life has been crazy and wild. So finishing 2 books isn't that much of an accomplishment, but I'm going to pat myself on the back. The first book we're going to talk about is the one I finished on my Kindle, and that was Gallows Pole by Eris Adderly. This, I thought, was going to be a pirate romance. It wasn't. It's in a pirate romance series. There are no pirates in this romance. This is the story of Emmett, in the beginning of the story, rushing on a stolen horse as fast as she can, trying to stop the execution of her brother. He is going to be hanged and she has to get there in time. And she does. She gets there in time and barters herself in exchange for her brother's life. So she now kind of belongs to our hangman or executioner. His name is Bartholomew Vale, but everybody calls him Vale. Well, everybody calls him Jack Ketch because back then, you wore a hood if you were an executioner. You were kind of a pariah, so he kind of lives on the outskirts of town, away from everyone, wears this black hood all the time. This, like most pirate romances, was a little bit on the darker side, actually, but this wasn't a pirate romance. It just happened to have all of the trappings of a pirate romance. We have an executioner, and Emmett is a highwayman. She does the robberies. She's a little bit of a thief. So she's not some, swooning maiden. She's got a history going on. This was like 80% spicy times and 20% not. There was actually a point in the story where I got really bored and was just kind of skimming. This I didn't love as much as the other romance that I have read from this author, and that one was much, much shorter, I felt like, too. This was fine. There was just a lot of, I'm going to call it dubious consent happening, and didn't love it. Didn't love that whole thing. Unless this is just something that you are over the moon and really, really want to read, I would skip this one. But I needed to read a historical romance to participate in the historical romance readathon that I was trying my best to participate in, so I got some points. There's some points in the mix. The next book that I finished was actually something that I really ended up liking. I was really surprised because I wasn't expecting much from this. I thought this was going to be your run-of-the-mill YA, and then I saw a bunch of reviews on Goodreads where people were very, very surprised for how much they enjoyed this. I am in that group. I am surprised. I ended up giving this a 4.5. This is the story of Elsbeth. She has a great big secret, and she ends up tangled up in this group of people that may or may not be committing treason against the crown in this world full of magic. She literally has a monster kind of just squatting on her brain. She has this consciousness that is just living in the back of her mind, and he is very morally gray. Our nightmare, as she calls him, is extremely just mysterious and might have some darker intentions. The last part of this book that I was reading, I was flipping pages like a madwoman. The sequel to this actually comes out in October, so in just a couple months, and I just can't wait because the end of this is definitely almost a cliffhanger, kind of a cliffhanger. The story reaches a point, and I was flipping the pages like a crazy person is the best way I can describe it. I really enjoyed the magic system in here. It sounds complicated when you try and explain it out loud, but it's easy to understand when you're reading the book. And I really liked all of our characters. We have a little bit of a love story going on between 2 of our characters. We have some hints at possible love connections between other characters that will be very, very forbidden if they go through with it. But the author has kind of put those hints on the table, and you're wondering if it's going to go in that direction. I'm excited to pick up to the sequel to this, and I'm glad that I waited to read this so it doesn't take that long between me finishing this one and the sequel coming out, because I hate when that happens. I like the instant gratification of when you have a cliffhanger of moving on to the second book. But I have finished 2 books. I've also gotten about 30% of the way into The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet, and I can actually give you a synopsis about what that book is about. We are introduced to the crew of a ship that punches wormholes, is the best way I can describe it. They are a ship that has a job, and they travel to places, punch wormholes so that other ships can pass through them. We are introduced to this crew by the newest crew member, who is Rosemary, and she has come onto this ship to start her new job, kind of keeping her past a secret, but we're getting to know all of the characters that are crew members on this ship, and I'm really enjoying this. The other Becky Chambers book that I have read is A Psalm for the Wild Built, I believe is what it's called, and that's a very cozy sci-fi. This also is feeling much more cozy sci-fi. There's much more happening in this than happens in that, but this is much more getting to know the characters' everyday life, learning how we're all going to have relationships together, and kind of getting peeks at all the different crew members and their lives and their behind the scenes as well. But this feels cozy and more slow, and I'm really, really enjoying that. But now that I have finished both my Kindle book and my physical book, I need to pick up the Murder Mermaids book, but for some reason, I don't want to. I was liking it. I don't know what my issue is. To stay out of reading slumps, we do not force ourselves to read things that we don't feel like reading. So I'm going to go look at my bookshelves and see if there's something else that catches my fancy. But I know what I'm going to pick up on my Kindle. I am going to read Ghost Walk, and this is by Cassandra Gannon. The original Goodreads cover that I saw for this is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. It looks like somebody's grandma photoshopped it for them. You know, someone who literally had never used Photoshop before. The cover that I found, because this is available on Kindle Unlimited, is much more fun and vibrant, and I'm going to put that one on the screen because that one is 110% better. But this is the story of Grace, and Grace, in the beginning, in the prologue, is a crime scene tech, someone that shows up at a crime scene and helps gather and retrieve all of the evidence at the scene when something crazy, bonkers, wild happens to her, and she kind of suffers a mental breakdown. And then we fast forward to Grace now working a job in a historic town in Virginia that's very into its colonial roots. She's doing the Ghost Walk tour, and she has a patron of her tour that is being very outspoken about how he feels about it. Well, this very outspoken individual on her ghost walk just happens to be an actual ghost, and Grace gets wrapped up in a whole chaotic crime investigation to try and figure out what happened to this guy. Well, we know what happened to him, but was he framed, or did he commit these crimes that he was accused of? Why can Grace see him? Why is Grace the only one that can see him? I'm into it. This is also going to be a romance of some kind. I mean, our male main character has a Scottish accent, so I'm into it. So I already know what I'm picking up on my Kindle. Let's see what physical book I decide to go with. All right, so per usual, I'm going to overlook all of the other books on both, because I have two TBR bookshelves, and I'm going to pick up the book that arrived the most recently, obviously. You get here, you move to the front of the line. This is actually going to be my first Olivie Blake book, and this is Masters of Death. I have been interested in this author. I actually own their debut that kind of took Book Talk by storm, and I know was the first book that got picked up by a publisher before they went back and started republishing traditionally some of her backlist, which is the Atlas 6, I think is what it is. I have it on my bookshelf. I haven't read it. I'm going to read this one first because it just showed up. I didn't say it makes sense. I'm just saying I'm doing it. All I know about this one is this is the story of a realtor who is trying to sell a house, but that realtor just happens to be a vampire, and the house just happens to be haunted. It is haunted by the ghost of someone who was murdered in the house, and they need to figure out what happened to them before they can move on. I don't know if this is going to be a comedy, or if this is going to be a romance, or if this is just going to be a random paranormal story, but how could I pass up that synopsis? That sounds ridiculous. I have to read that. So we are going to pick up Masters of Death by Olivie Blake. I'm having a rough morning. But she's just having the time of her life. She's been chasing this ball that came out of another toy. It is probably like the cheapest thing in the entire toy box. It's her new favorite thing. We've been chasing it around all morning, so we're doing great. I have spilled water down the front of myself. Also, my eye is swollen. Don't look. Be a friend and don't look at it. How about that? I don't know what's happening. Could be dying. I could have slept on it wrong. Being a human is hard. But I'm here to update you because I have read 100 pages of Masters of Death, and I can give you a more succinct, a more informed synopsis. I can also tell you that I know who all these people on the end papers are now. There's also this side. All of them. I know who all these people are. It took 100 pages, but I know who they all are. Yes, this is the story of V, who is a vampire, although she is not your traditional European influenced, aka Dracula influenced vampire. She, I believe, was bitten while she was in was it the Philippines? Where's my phone? I'm gonna Google this word. Literally no telling. I know that my phone is in the house, so that's a good starting point. I'm going to put the name of the Filipino culture has a word that they use. It's like all encompassing for their traditional mythological creature that's similar to a vampire, but also they use this word. It says on the Wikipedia. So the internet says that this word is also used to describe ghouls, which is viscera suckers and transforming human beast hybrids. A viscera sucker. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be an awesome name for a punk band. The Viscera Suckers. I would buy that t-shirt. Live at the Fillmore, the Viscera Suckers. Okay, so V is a kind of vampire that is present in Filipino lore where, yes, she does need blood, she does have fangs, but she also shapeshifts. And kind of the things that she craves are a little different than your traditional Dracula type vampire that you're used to. We also are introduced to Fox, who is the godson of death. We have Death himself, who is a personification. Honestly, in this world, you have every and all possible supernatural, mythological, paranormal creatures living out their lives, going to work, paying their taxes, trying to get free Wi-Fi. And they all are existing unbeknownst to the humans around them. It sounds like everywhere is just absolutely crowded with the paranormal and everybody's just not paying attention and doesn't know. In this book, we also have an angel and a reaper that have been introduced. We have a mysterious character that is our last character that has most recently been introduced. We had some foreshadowing, I believe, for who this character is going to be, but I'm not 100% sure yet. And we have a ghost. We have a demon. It sounds super complicated. It's not. They're all living in an urban setting. So they have things like cell phone and they ride subways. This is all taking place in Chicago. We start our story with learning about Fox, who is the godson of Death and how he became Death's godson and what he does for a living, kind of getting a little bit of his personality. At the same time, we're finding out about V, how she became a vampire, meeting her friends. She has one really good friend that's a demon. And then she is a real estate agent and she's trying to sell this house. And there's a ghost haunting this house, but he doesn't know why he's stuck in this house. He is recently deceased and he can't leave until they find out what happened to him. And he has no memory. He has fuzzy memories from the day he was murdered, but no memory of his murder whatsoever. So at the 100-page point, basically we have met all the players in the game and they're all have met each other or about to meet each other, which I feel like usually happens. It takes about 100 pages, I feel like, in any book for us to meet all of the characters that are going to be playing in the game. And then at the 100-page mark, the band all gets together and then our adventure happens. So far, I'm actually really enjoying this. It took just like a second to get into the writing style. I will tell you, I would not want to play this author in Scrabble. She's got a vocabulary that is beyond mine, and sometimes I have to stop and look at a word just for an extra beat. Then it clicks, and I'm like, okay, either context is going to take me through, or thank goodness for Google, because spelling is not my strong suit. Okay, so this book not only can have some vocabulary words, some super point Scrabble words, but also there's a lot of cussing, which I find really funny. There's definitely been some funny moments. There's a lot of banter, but I think the writing style is something that you kind of have to get into the groove of. It took me a second. I got it after a minute. Like with every author, you're kind of getting used to the way they write, how they tell a story. There's a lot of jumping back and forth when you're meeting a character from the present timeline to back in their past to how they became what they are, back to the present timeline. And so in the beginning, that can be it can leave you going, oh, okay, yes, I remember where we started the scene. We're back in that room. Okay. But other than that, I'm having a good time with it. I love that there's such a rich variety in paranormal creatures and that it's not just the usual kind of stereotypical ones that you would find in a fantasy book, that they have thrown some of these things on their head. It's like, yes, the Dracula version of a vampire, exists, but we are also using another version of a vampire that exists in another culture. And that's really, really interesting because I don't know that much about Filipino culture or Filipino mythological creatures. So I like this version of a vampire. I like all of the rules that are being set up. I'm interested to see who our final character that was introduced, who they turn out to be, even though we've gotten little sprinkles of a little bit of their past. So far I'm liking it. I mean, I flew through 100 pages, so it can't be bad. I am actually about to head to work here in 15 minutes. And then I've got a shorter day, and then hopefully I can get some reading done today because it's going to be like 1,000,000 degrees outside. So I'm not going outside. But I will check back in with you when I have finished something. Hopefully I finished something. I have finished some books. All right, I have officially finished 2 more books. I have been doing really well this week when it comes to finishing books. I'm kind of proud of myself. The first book that I finished is going to be The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And my final thoughts on this one were I absolutely enjoyed the heck out of this. This reminds me of, and I feel like this is absolutely probably wrong, but this reminds me of like a TV show in the best way possible. Hear me out. So this book, instead of being like high octane space adventure, is more of a slow, cozy adventure where we have a crew of a spaceship getting from point A to point B, and in between kind of encountering obstacles. But really, the point of the story is for you to get to know these characters, get a little bit of their backstory, see a little bit of their relationships to each other, see new relationships that are forming within the crew, and really just falling in love with this group of people. And it reminds me of when you are watching a TV show that you really, really enjoy. I kept saying Firefly, but I have absolutely never seen that show, so I do not know what the vibes are, but I know everybody that has ever watched it has always been a very big fan. But let's say a ragtag crew of multi-species people that are traveling through space, and in each episode there is a conflict that happens, but the overarching season has one destination in mind. That's how I would look at this. And not that it's cheesy or that it feels episodic. It doesn't. It's just kind of we have these conflicts that happen throughout. The real meat of this is the characters. It's much slower and cozier than your normal kind of sci-fi adventure. I, so far, have loved both Becky Chambers' books I have read, and I can 100% say that I'm going to continue on with both series that I have started from this author. If you like cozier sci-fi, if you love found family, here you go. I really enjoyed this. And since Cheese and I went on an extra long walk this morning, I was able to finish. Doesn't she look exhausted? It'll last for like 10 minutes and then she's going to be doing the Zooms. The next book that I finished, let me put her clothes back on. She's naked. The Masters of Death. Now, I ended up teetering somewhere between a 3 and a 3.5, maybe 4 star with this, and I ended up going for a 3 star. Let me explain. This book had a lot of things I really, really liked about it. All of the paranormal creatures, there's a game component to this, there's a lot of relationships happening. The things that kind of fell short for me were things that I think that this author will improve in time, and so I'm very willing to pick up more from this author. I know that this was originally self-published. I don't know if this was on like a self-publishing website or if it was actually something that you could purchase prior to this author being picked up by Tor. This story has a lot of things that you can tell the author was really excited about, but a lot of it can get to be almost a little bit overwhelming. There are a lot of characters in this. And though I found that all of the characters were interesting, I don't feel like we had enough time to really be invested in all of the relationships that are presented. I think that we got a lot of Fox and his broken heart love interest situation. We got a lot of V. We got a lot of Tom. We got a lot of these ones that I did enjoy, but there were some of the other ones that kind of fell by the wayside, or even when a relationship was introduced, you're kind of just you don't have any brain space left for another relationship. If this was a series and these characters all got more time throughout a series, I think that would have vastly improved my interest in a lot of the relationships that were going on. I also think this author really loves to plan ahead, have plot twists going on. When some of the twists or reveals happened, some of them I was just like, oh my God, this is so good. And some of them felt kind of lackluster. And I think that's because there were so many. This just felt, and I hope this comes off as a positive thing, because I do think it's a positive thing, that this author was just so enthusiastic about this story and all of the stories going on within it that they almost packed a little bit too much in this. This is a good indicator that this author is only going to get better and better, and that their books are only going to get better and better, because the things that I don't like about this, there was too much. And I think that that's because this author has so many stories to tell. I also think there is a lot of time jumping in this, and I felt like sometimes it was executed well and sometimes it just kind of left you with your head spinning. You needed to take a beat and remember where the chapter started or the story started, because you'd been so many places in between. So I think that, final thoughts, I like this author. I can also tell you that this author obviously is a Neil Gaiman fan, because this had a lot of a Neil Gaiman feel to it, if that also makes sense. But it wasn't Endgame. This is an author that's like in the beginning of their career, and they're just going to keep getting better and better. And I can't wait to read some of the books from this author in the future. I think that some of these things that were kind of, I don't even want to say negatives, but just were harder for me in this novel will be things that this author polishes over time and really gets the hang of. I think she's talented. I just think this is more of a 3 than a 4 for me. And I hope that's not disappointing. I was a little bit disappointed. I wanted to like this more. Not to say that I didn't like it. I did like it. I got emotional over some moments. I was definitely invested in some of the characters. It was just a 3, which is still not bad. 3's not bad. 3's good. It's just not great, which was unfortunate. But I finished a lot of books this week, and I'm kind of proud of myself. I also got a lot of things done around the house. I feel accomplished within this week, and I love that reading blogs are making me finish books instead of just casually picking up 1,000 or picking up my phone and doom scrolling, because that's not something we want to do either. But that, kids, is where we are going to end this pizza party. I finished some books I liked this week. I had some good reading, and I hope you're having good reading out there, wherever you are. If you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.